It's my brand.
Your brand. Amazing. Yep.
Oh, love it when synchronicity happens.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's all right. I stand by it. No, I remember.
Jason, yeah, you mentioned Betsy a little while ago. Have you heard anything about it or?
You know what, there's a lot of food. She had, maybe I had to take.
Yeah, that I know, because her husband posted this.
Yeah, I
I
think
better-
Monica Hubbard is where I heard about her condition. I sent her
More true.
I'm probably even more true, so.
It's rated as the #1 community college in the country.
Oh, PCC is the bomb,
Yeah,
like, it's amazing,
unbelievable, the transfer activity that happens
Yeah.
in the school.
but that's my point, is that like, that's a relationship, and I have no problem talking like that.
Well, we'll add that to the list
Yeah.
of suggested partnership and program opportunities. And I think this is a great segue into community outreach and communications, because if they're having trouble getting people to understand what they've got, and this is a problem all government agencies have and educational institutions, is what is going on and what resources do they have? So a lot of points came up during all of the conversations, except actually the stakeholder. There were some great partnership ideas, but less about, they really feel like the library is doing good communications, but internally staff and on the board, there was a lot of conversation about, can we beef up the messages about what the library is today? Can we do a better job of getting our messages out? Whether it's through understanding various segments of our population, or whether it is, broad and general to make sure that everybody gets it. And then there were some specific ideas about community-wide communication campaigns that might be able to go on. So I'd like to just open it up and hear what you all are thinking. And just keeping in mind that what we're talking about today is, board level ideas, brainstorming, not directions to staff. They're going to take this information back, and with the communications and capacity they have, try to build towards the goals that you're putting out here, or the ideas, but we'll leave that to them. So.
I feel like,
Very strong.
yeah, I feel like the one thing I feel like we have very high expectations of ourselves. And I think that's probably where the disconnect is between like how the community views we are on the success level versus how we are, but I don't think that means that we should take the foot off the gas either, but I do want us all to.
And you did a very intensive community outreach during the Measure Z, so.
Well, the campaign committee did the library staff did too, but like, there was a limit to what you can
Right.
spend publications in
Right.
dollars, so that
Right.
was in fact not in the library.
One of the most forlorn sounds of our meetings is, Catalina, do we have anybody that hasn't?
Yeah.
She dutifully looks at her computer and says, no, there's not, and it happens every freaking time, excuse my French. That was too bad, I guess. Be great just to have more people dial in and see what's going on, and I don't see that happening.
Well, but back to the initial point is it because we're doing such a good job, or is it because of disengagement?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, no, that's right. I have two things I want to kind of throw out on this, and one is that I think that, and I'm saying this with full awareness that my good friends on the budget committee are sitting right here. I think that we need to invest more resources on this front in a couple of ways. One, I think that, again, as an independent special district, this is one of the places where we really feel the downside of not having a whole city or county mechanism at our disposal, because we have to be responsible for 100% of our heavy lifting. And how often do we talk to people who go, oh, I didn't know Altadena had its own libraries. I thought you were part of the county system. So like at a fundamental level, there is a basic lack of awareness that like we exist as an independent district. And so like, that's what I'm saying. We have to do a lot that, maybe part of a library that is part of a city or county jurisdiction wouldn't have to. So I have two things that I think are worth considering. One is I think we should build in a direct mail budget. I think we should be sending actual mail to actual people, post office, recipient addresses every single year, probably multiple times a year, but like, to go back to the Measure Z thing, right? We devoted a huge amount of that $100,000 campaign budget to direct mail. And the reason is that like, yes, it's old fashioned, but it works. And a lot of the constituents that we're not reaching are people who are on the other side of that digital divide, people who are not comfortable with email, people who maybe don't have email, don't have internet, don't have, consistent access, or don't feel comfortable, or just like that's not part of their lexicon, right? So direct mail is a way to reach those people and get the library in front of them consistently in a way that ensures they will see it every single time. So that's one piece. And yes, direct mail is expensive, like it just is. But
Go
it's
to your
worth it.
second thing.
Yes.
Didn't you plan? Didn't I hear that in the last
There's a
meeting that
motion.
we were gonna,
Maybe.
oh, okay.
I don't think
Support
it's
some direct-
fully.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can provide an update on that.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Yeah, we talked about it, I talked about it. Bryn did some research, because we reached out to NBS, who did a direct mailer for us about the special tax lien last year, just to find out like how much it cost them, et cetera, et cetera. She connected with some vendor, and if we don't put names on it, it's just resident. We can do like a postcard for like $3,200 or something like that. You know, the number that was always told me is like $15,000 anytime you do a direct mail. So we're building into your budget adjustments, 2 mailers this year.
Okay.
We thought we'd do one soon about second Saturdays, just the schedule. And then we'll do another one probably about building projects. We're not exactly sure, but in a couple months from now. But I think, and then next year we'll build in a direct mailing budget, but it's not as bad as we thought.
That's really good news.
Yeah.
That's really good news. And
What
I
is
think-
the number for the 3,200? Is that like, how many households on?
There's over 13,000.
Yeah.
But I wanna make sure that it's like all of the rental addresses.
Yeah.
Because what NBS did for us was only property owners.
Yeah, no, we need
So-
to.
So I'm not exactly sure what the number is with additional but I mean, there's so many just single family homes here.
Yeah.
But it's right now in the range of 13 to 14,000.
Yeah, because registered voters is like 12.5.
I thought it was 20.
Wasn't it like 8,000
It's
times
20,
five?
it's, individuals
Demographic.
in mailboxes.
Oh, got it.
Right, because you've got multiple voters in my draft.
Okay.
So I think that sounds right to me,
Right.
that it's probably somewhere around.
Well, it's definitely 13,000 some number of parcels.
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah.
Because that's what
yeah,
your census shows.
I
is
don't think
30.
that would reflect like apartment buildings.
Housing units.
Multi-tenant housing.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
right.
Yeah, I think it was 15,000 housing units, including rental, so 13
Yeah.
is probably your owner.
So we'll play with the idea of down the road putting names on them, but we're not sure.
I think doing anything is amazing. Yeah, we don't need names on them,
I
right?
think
So in
that we do-
addition to direct mail touch, what other forms of communication and or do you want to talk about? Let's talk about the forms of communication, but also the messages that you think are really important in this community, because I think that's where you all have some really good insights.
I've got a wild one that people probably poo-poo, but that's okay. Billboards, we got some billboards in Lake Avenue, and if there was some special thing going on. Pardon me,
Billboards.
they're expensive, okay.
We can do it.
What about bus routes?
Yeah.
That's a good question, but
Because there's the one bus line that circles through.
that I don't
the-
know. how much those are.
Bus stops.
Yeah,
No,
So
the actual wraps. You
like
can
the
get
rounds,
wraps.
Like the stops too, though.
the stuff like the.
The benches that they sit on, yeah.
The,
My friend has a
I
bunch.
didn't know that, 'cause we do that.
Every time we drive by,
Target.
it's a best stop posters kind of thing.
they like, he has, like my friend has a real estate, his face is on the bench. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, those sorts of public,
So physical.
yeah, the public messaging is got, to me, it's got a lot of power. It's subliminal, you know what I mean? It's
Right,
back here.
and what public messaging, do you think, I mean, what do you think is the most powerful way you can
Well,
present yourself?
to me, it would be a billboard for some special thing that we're gonna do.
Events.
People notice that kind of thing. I think direct.
So
is
it's-
great.
It's active, it's
Yeah.
not just.
I think anything we do should have a QR code with a link, not a billboard, but if any direct mailer we do should have a QR code. And I think if we were to do something like a bus wrap with the benches, there should be a QR code, right? Because that can be permanent and you can change on the back end where exactly it lands you. I think Katie made me think too, like, I think people not understanding the independence that our libraries have and
Yeah.
how that sets us apart. And the opportunities that that provides, right? Because I think people that are used to like Pasadena City Library, like a city library or a county library, where there's frankly very little opportunity for the public to have a direct say in how it's run, what is offered, all that kind of stuff, right? And that's usually the conversation, like every once in a while that'll pop up on local social media, right? Like, why aren't we county? And the one thing is there's immediately a group of people that jump on and be like, we never want to be county because, and they list all the cool stuff we're able to do, right? But I think, I think that should be a priority thing for us, is more the community to understand why that independence is important and the opportunities that it provides.
I think too, and this year was great because we got some like organic press pickup about library things, which was very cool. That helps a lot. But Danielle, you said this at the beginning, and it's very true. Like the nature of libraries has changed a lot. And I think a lot of people have no idea the depth and breadth and diversity of things that the library does. Like every single conversation I have with people about the library, I'm like, you can check out a hotspot, you can come to a concert, you can check out a sewing machine, you can get your library card for free online. You don't have to pay for a Kindle. You can like read your ebooks for free. You can do that. And we do like 10 million things. And people have no idea. And they're like, oh, well, I just thought it was books, or I don't have kids who are like story time age, so I don't use the library.
So I think this was the theme, Katie, that is kept coming up, that people have a nostalgic definition of the library, and that you have an opportunity to sort of recraft the message.
Yeah, I think it's a yes and, right? Like,
Right.
yes, we do have books and collections, and we have all these other things. And so I think doing some work, and I think we do that already, but like, people don't pay attention, you know what I mean? I think there's a huge opportunity to say like, yes, it's all the things that you know and love about libraries, and all these other things that you didn't know existed that are so cool.
Nikki, can people place holds on stuff that's in the library of things? So what if, like, I was like, this literally just popped into my head.
Yeah.
But if we literally had like a menu that you could have on a poster board with a Curiosity Connection QR code on the bottom, that people could literally on the spot place a hold on like whatever.
Telescope or something.
Like there's a lady on Facebook in my neighborhood thing the other day who's like, hey, like I'm going hiking. Does anybody have a pair of binoculars that I could borrow? And I'm like, well, actually, we have these
Check out backpacks.
and
Yeah,
she's like,
totally.
"What? There's backpacks in it, like, just to your point, like, because you can't take all that stuff out with the Curiosity
No.
Connection, but if you had like a menu and people could just boom, like, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Look at us like adding all this stuff to the list.
Well, we're gonna. About that, because there was a post going around in a couple of the hiking groups about Baldwin Hills Library has hiking sticks and hiking backpacks. I was like, we do too, maybe not the sticks,
Not the
but
sticks, yeah.
we have,
Also have a ghost hunting kit.
Yeah, suck it, Baldwin.
Take that,
Library.
Baldwin Hills.
Yeah.
Look for ghosts.
I guess one thing that I understand about communications, and you guys probably know more than I do about it, but I think that you really need to understand what, messages you want to send before you start, like a direct mail, or if you want to get the word out on other social media, you've got to have that content piece put together in a pretty tight way. So you were talking about just the budget for direct mail alone, but I think there's budgets before you get to direct mail, but.
Well, this was my second thing from earlier, right? I think.
Oh,
we
I
need
didn't- we didn't
spend
get to
money
it.
on
Thank you.
things. No, one is direct mail, great. The other is, I think we need to resource our communications and marketing effort more than we do. Like, we have Bryn, she's amazing, she does a ton. Nikki does a ton, Catalina does, like, all of our staff do a ton, but like, we're gonna be in a situation where we're closing the library, we're gonna have some real heavy lifting on the communications and outreach front. And the amount that already has to happen there just to like, make sure stuff is going up on social media and the website and about all our regular operations. I think we should really consider resourcing that effort more robustly in the coming year, whether that's staff or, contractor. I mean, it means more people. It means paying more people to do that work. whether that's part-time or, you know.
Interns.
I mean, listen, I love an intern and we have great teams, but somebody's got to come up with the whole process and structure it and hand out those jobs, and that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And you need somebody who knows what they're doing. Because that's sort of the point, right, is it's not
Are the
just-
messages gonna stick?
Well, it's how are the messages gonna stick, but
How
like,
they deliver?
when we run a campaign, right, we don't just like throw stuff at voters. You have to do it in a particular order, you have to do it in a particular way, you have to think about the timing, you have to think about how many times they're gonna encounter that message, where they're gonna encounter that message. It has to be identical. The sort of rule of thumb is you have to tell people something 7 times before they retain anything about it at all. And that's totally true, like, it can be frustrating sometimes in public agency world to be like, well, we've said this and it's on the website. It doesn't matter. You have to physically go to people's houses and tell them the same thing 7 times around, and then maybe they'll like retain it. And people have a lot going on. There's a lot of noise out there. We have to break through.
Yeah.
So it's gonna cost money to do that well. And I'm not here to say like what the nuts and bolts are, exactly how that should shake out, but I do think we're expecting a hell of a lot for the capacity we have right now, and I think we need to resource it better.
Yeah, especially like you said, I think we've got, give or take 2 years. to
Yeah.
Figure that out,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I think we'll be able to kind of beta test some stuff with Bob Lucas, right? Like it'd be cool to do a direct mail for like a groundbreaking ceremony and see what that produces or stuff like that, but yeah, because then, I mean, best case scenario, this library will be closed for 18 months.
Right.
Right, like that's best case. So,
Well, and I know that this is like, some people have very strong opinions about yard signs, but you guys remember when Terry Madre did their, like, I love my library yard signs a couple years ago?
Yeah.
you still see them up.
You still see them up. There's a lot of benefit to that kind of thing, right? Because like people drive by, and if we had some sort of yard sign or whatever it was, you know, basically, I think the message is the Altadena Library does more than you think,
Yeah.
right? It's more than, it's, you know. And if there's a way for people to kind of see like, oh, wow, that's cool. Even if we just had, you know, everybody in the Friends and the Foundation stick one in their front yard.
Kind of a watch us grow kind of a sign.
Yeah, watch us grow, that kind of thing, cause like, if we can get some public, like, good enthusiasm out there ahead of closing the buildings, then it's not like you're taking something away. It's like, oh, we all know this is coming and we're excited about it.
We ran out of, I mean, people, when we were doing the Measure Z lawn signs.
Yeah.
People wanted them.
Oh, yeah, they were very popular.
We ran out of them.
And we didn't have a huge yard sign budget. I mean, I don't remember exactly.
We did 300.
Did we? You delivered all of
Yeah,
them, so
no.
I know you.
I was
did.
happy that they went quick because my garage was empty.
Yeah. Yeah, what did we end up?
I think it was 300, but yeah.
What was the goal of that campaign for the Sierra Madre Library? Like, what were they trying to accomplish?
I don't know if it was just a visibility
I
thing.
think they were doing a
No, they were doing a
fundraising, like if you.
Yeah, they were doing-
Yeah,
but it
were
failed.
They were building goodwill,
Yeah, no, they failed
For that
because
big project.
I think they relied on goodwill instead of organizing was the problem.
Right.
Yeah, well, that happened.
They didn't hire us.
Goodwill, like you gotta.
Meet their goal?
No, right?
No,
You knew.
They are now gonna be able to renovate because I think, didn't Holden get that money?
Yeah, Holden got the money and they got some other.
I think the
state money.
city,
Or
yeah, the city
or
might have
something.
given them some, but they were gonna have to pass the ballot measure the same year we did. And they knew it wouldn't pass, so they didn't even put it on the ballot.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It was a very catchy and memorable sign though. like
It was
the-
good, yeah.
It would work for us.
So we've talked a lot about ways to get the message out and the need for updated messages. Are there other big point items that would help the staff prioritize their work over the next few years?
Well, I think Jason makes a good point about as we step through the process now, beginning with Bob Lucas, we're gonna learn a lot about.
Right, using the opening, thank you.
And
Yeah, I've got that
then
one down
we'll
too.
attach those lessons to the next phase, which is gonna be the main library. Set expectations that we could be down for 18 months, or they're going somewhere else for their books for 18 months.
But I'm glad to see the staff are already looking ahead at kind of like merchandising as part of the camp, like I'm excited to see that stuff comes out, because I think you'll get. Because people like people go crazy just for those like beautiful Altadena license plate things,
Mhm.
right? Like the second Webster's puts them out, they sell out, right? And it's like, I feel like we could like be giving people another opportunity to market Altadena, and it would just happen to be the library stuff, right?
I would, yeah, I would totally rock a license plate holder for a library. I think that is a good idea in terms of not just specifically, but this flag, and I know that we are gonna use the local shop local as, a way for people to earn that, but I think it's a good, I like it. I'm just saying, I
This
like
is
it.
also something that the Friends could really
Yeah, I was gonna
pick up
say,
and do,
can
right?
we,
Like,
can we offload, you know,
there's no reason that they couldn't do print on demand merch where they don't have to have inventory that sits in boxes. But like, yeah, you scan a QR code, you get a t-shirt shipped to your house. You scan a QR code, you get a tote bag, it shows up at your house in a week. Like, that's not hard to do.
It's building the e-commerce piece.
That's
the
right.
delay.
That's right.
Honestly.
I think so
Yeah,
too,
it's
like
hard.
linking to
Yeah.
to social
the-
media.
Because really the Friends is just a vehicle of which we can drive the fundraising through.
Correct. Yeah.
But we just haven't been able to build the e-commerce piece to do it yet.
I also think that maybe if you're going to go down this road of looking at building marketing capacity, you know, it should start with who are we serving and what messages are sticky with them, those groups and those.
How much are those big signs? I was thinking about that the other day. It was only because I was driving down Lake and it looked like one was falling down. There were,
Oh, the farmer's market one?
yeah, there were
Yeah,
wires hanging down, but
Like the banners?
yeah, the
Oh.
big ones that go across the street. I wonder about something like that. Just like more old school kind of ways and doesn't have like the direct mail or kind of going back to basics.
Nikki, what are the rules with the resources that so like, for example, right, the Fab Lab has a patch maker. Like, can we sell things? Like, how does that work?
So, like, for example, what we're talking about with the merchandising,
Right,
if we sell it, we can only recover the cost.
right,
So like if a t-shirt costs $15 and 25 cents, let's say, we can only charge like $15.50.
got it.
But if we sell it through the Friends of the Foundation, we can mark it up a little bit for them to,
Sure,
for it to be a little bit of fundraising in the process.
but the library itself can only recoup base material costs.
Yes, which is why like what we do in the Fab Lab, we just build the cost of the materials into operating the
Right.
Fab Lab.
Okay, I'd like to, there, any other thoughts about community outreach and communications? Because this is really, seems to be an area where there's a lot of consensus that if you spend the attention and the planning and get the messages right and get the vehicles for getting the messages out right, you will be in the position for the next topic, which is building library leadership. And that's just one piece. I mean, obviously, more user activity is the big goal, but this is the one thing that is in the back of the minds of most of the board members is a high priority for your work. And that is, you know, how can you build sort of a pipeline? I think the community awareness is part of it, building the relationships is part of it. Having good partner relationships where they're really being your champions and wanting to know more about how this body meets and works. Maybe a little overwhelmed by the amount of work you do, because it's been quite intense as you do these building projects, and probably as you move out a new marketing plan, communications plan, will take a lot of board activity. But what are the things, in addition to it just being a concern, what are the things you think that you can do and the library district can back you up as in terms of just getting out and building this leadership pipeline to make the district structure a success? I think it's really getting into parts of the community that you don't have good connections with at this moment.
Personally, I just try to tell my friends about things that might be coming up. We had appointment boys and stuff that I would tell my friends about, and, like in our ad hoc committees and standing committees and so on. There's membership opportunities there, and then I always say, you would be good at that. And, that kind of, gets, well, yeah, let me know about the next one that comes up, and I'll make sure that I do that. No fruit has been born yet from that, but,
Yeah.
I think that personal thing is really effective.
I am curious about people that have applied before and
How you track that.
Yes, yes, I was thinking about like, even going back to, I came in on an appointment first, right, back in 2020. And I think there were maybe like 5 or 6, I don't know, it was nice, it was a group, and then we had this huge group, this last time, and I'm just curious, like, about potentially what district they may fall in, like where do they live? Do we send like a follow-up letter, like, thank you for applying, please come back the next time and tell your friends, or, so looking at the people who have shown interest in the past and nurturing those relationships to encourage them to come back and, either run so that we don't have to do an appointment, or, if they don't run because, for whatever reason, to just come back or to even look at and ask them in, some sort of follow-up communication, are there other ways that, we could get them involved and, like on the different committees or, I don't know.
Well, I think that's so important, Camila, and it makes me think too, like, one, we definitely should have like a database of all those people, right, who have applied since.
Or even those that ran, I mean.
Everybody who ran, yeah, totally. And then I think like, this is another piece where, like, again, if we were a city or a county or whatever, there would be commissions and things you can appoint people to, and like, it's really hard to make the jump from never having done anything in local politics to running for office. It's really hard and it feels really inaccessible. It's often quite expensive, like, it's just daunting. And I would love it if we had that list of, 20, 50 people. If we could go to them and offer them opportunities to engage, not like, how else can we help you, but like, hey, we're doing a pop-up where we're talking to folks in your neighborhood. Can you come join us? Hey, we're doing a thing where we're convening the community focus group. Can you be a part of that? Where we're actively soliciting them to participate? Because I think that's a huge piece of it. If somebody doesn't feel connected, they're not gonna wanna take on the work or wanna take on the, commitment of time and energy and everything to actually run.
I agree, and if they don't, because maybe, at the time they're physically or whatever unable to in terms of like a time
That's fine, yeah.
commitment. But can they, like each one bring one, like tell someone about it or
That's right.
recruit someone, because maybe you're not able to do it, but who can you send in your place?
That's right.
Basically. I think that, and I don't know if there are the staff resources to do this tracking or, follow up, but I think it would be helpful because you already have people that have expressed interest, and I think that we need to, tap into that.
Well,
and build
I mean,
from that.
yeah, I will do that as part of the redistricting thing, right? Like, if we can get that list, I can reach out to people and say like, hey, how's it going? What's been happening with you?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's so important.
I saw the
Especially
effect
this
of that.
last one,
There were a ton of people and they were
Good.
good. They were real good.
I saw the effect of that in the first person, when one of the guys that was running for the vacancy at Bloomfield, I saw him on the street walking his dog,
Yeah.
and I recognized, I walked over to him, I forget his last name, I started with a B. And I said, Mr. So-and-so, thank you so much, it's Terry, thank you so much for coming out and applying for that.
Yeah.
That position, it really means a lot to us, and you could just tell he was like back on his feet, like, oh my God, I didn't know that they felt that way about me.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you that we remain on that person's front burner for anything that happens.
Totally, totally. Yeah, that feels so important to know. I think you're totally right.
What other avenues do you already work in that, you know, with maybe a little packet about what it means to be a board member or what sort of agenda, you know, the strategic plan or maybe some little kit, future board member kit or something, information, or even just a meeting with an existing board member. What other avenues would there be that you could suggest in your circles of influence?
Well, I think earlier someone already mentioned like this idea of like coffee with the board or something. I think that would be an interesting idea to kind of push whether, I think the only thing would be like, we can't all be together. Yeah, but it's a fascinating idea because I think that would help this, right?
Yeah.
If people show an interest for understanding what's going on, they probably want to go further. And yeah, I think that if that's something that actually gets like some kind of traction, I feel like we could probably use that as a recruiting tool, both an exposure and a recruiting tool as well. And taking that step further, maybe not coffee per se, but you know, we did like walking tours around the neighborhood, like just something, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter
I
what it
think it
is.
would totally, you know, kind of engage the community and kind of bring people on board.
One place that we look a lot when we're trying to recruit candidates to run for a local office is PTAs, right? Because usually folks who are like involved in their PTA I kind of started the process of getting organized. They have a built-in network. They already kind of have, you know, moved in that direction. I would love to see us develop relationships with all the public school PTAs and really, you know, I'm thinking about like, you know, when they did the whole name change process, like,
You also have Rotary
Jackson.
connections, you have chamber connections.
sure.
Seems to me like there would be, I don't know, are there neighborhood groups?
There's a CONA, which is Altadena Neighborhood. CONA. Coalition of
There's a few
Neighborhood
different-
Associations,
Yeah.
Altadena, Coalition of Neighborhood Associations, they meet every other month. They met last week, actually.
And then you have HOA,
No,
There's one.
one.
well, yeah,
Do you have merchant?
That's gonna bring up a whole.
that's,
Do you
But
have
there is-
merchant associations for like Lincoln Street or Woodbury?
Just a chamber of commerce.
Just chamber, okay.
I think that would be, I would be, willing to, like, if there was a connection with at least the local schools and that are in our area and we, you know, like someone, you know, we could be assigned.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I can go to Altadena Art.
Totally.
To, you know, I think that would be good.
we should talk to Jennifer Lilly, who's on PUSD board, because I know she's been doing a lot of work on this too, and it might be that like that set of relationships already exists, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Just get on the agendas of various PTAs.
It got really cold in here.
Oh, good.
I'm sorry, or maybe it's just me.
Ghost.
Sidebar.
Maybe it's a ghost.
Jacket.
In terms of your growing senior populations, are there senior community
There are, there's
centers?
several.
Are there?
Yeah, I have a personal pony in that race because I have a senior in my home
Yeah.
that I would love to get her out.
The senior center's got lots of cool programs, and then there's also, there's Montecito too.
Montecito, yeah, that's right.
What is Montecito?
It's a
It's
senior
a
living.
senior-
Okay,
but it's pretty massive. I don't know how many units.
It
are
is
there, but-
massive, yeah, and they're building a whole new.
Yeah, they keep building.
thing,
So do
yeah.
they have programs?
They have a ton of programs.
Yeah.
I've spoken there before.
Okay.
A really robust group of people,
Uh-huh.
Westerners.
It's a higher income
Yeah.
demographic,
Yeah,
like
it's-
Montecito's, they're doing just fine.
Uh-huh.
But we did have
Eat-
support from
Eaton
them.
Canyon, is there like a community centers or are there senior groups that?
No.
Eaton Canyon is,
It's county.
it's
County.
county, yeah, and so they do have like a nature center. They're
Yeah,
looking at
that's what I was
a
wondering.
nature center, but that's all for the county, so that's not,
And most of the, honestly, I think at Eaton Canyon, the
those
most,
are not.
most of the participation there is gonna be people from outside all the team.
Yeah.
Okay.
Put on my jacket,
I mean, this redistricting thing is gonna be wild, right? Like, who knows what those maps are gonna look like?
And when are those maps gonna be available? Kate?
March,
In
will
March
be
already?
the first set of draft maps.
Oh, I had a question because I totally missed it. Why is the redistricting different from our census tract, et cetera?
Yes, so census tract, so basically it's a jurisdiction thing, right? So census tracts are put in place by the US Census Bureau to figure out like, you know, how many people you talk to. And that happens to be how the town council organizes themselves as a
Right.
census tract.
Mhm.
The Altadena Library District is not totally coterminous with the census tracts,
Mhm.
right? Because it's a function of the unincorporated parts of Altadena. So why can't we just have census tracts? It's likely that some of the district boundaries will be similar.
Somewhere?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
there's some edges that are not.
well,
Similar,
there are
yeah.
8 census tracts and we need 5
Right.
districts, so they can't be totally coterminous. But there will probably be many shared lines, because that's one of the criteria that they have to consider in drawing the draft maps is like, where are natural boundaries? And that's true for census tracts as well.
Right.
So that could really inform your marketing efforts too.
Yes.
That you
Yeah.
want to be sure you're really hitting all of those 5 districts.
That's right,
We'll be looking for that 8,200.
Yeah, that's right.
Or whatever we do, okay.
that's right, that's right.
That was my first question too, when I joined that committee, it's like. Should
Can we just do
already
that?
done?
Yeah, I know, I wish I could.
Well, and then part of it, so maybe it's again a silly question, so. Why don't we have 8 on this board as opposed to 5? And maybe that's
Because
just-
ours, yeah, it's not a silly question at all. So we, as a special district, exist as a library district, and our establishing act is the education code.
Right,
And the California Education Code mandates that we have 5 representatives. That's why we only have 2 officers. We have a president and a secretary, that's it. So,
fine, huh?
yeah, yeah, so that's just because that's our establishing act from 1927 to now.
Is it mandated that that is the number or the minimum?
Minimum.
That's the number,
That's the number.
it's
Okay.
the number, yep,
Interesting.
Yep.
I didn't know that.
yep.
Other thoughts we have about building leadership?
I think it's really important for each of us to start identifying people individually, you know what I mean? Like similarly to Jason, like I'm not gonna be on this board forever. My goal is to like hand off to somebody so that we can see if it works or not, right? Like, and so I'm always thinking like, hey, who would be a good person? Because a lot of people need to be asked to run. And so you have to go to them and say like, hey, I'm thinking about stepping down, you know, in 2028 or 2026 or whatever it is. I want you to start thinking about this. Like, I think you'd be really good as a trustee. I'd love to see you run for that seat or for that vacancy. This is a little controversial, but I was gonna say it. It's a lot easier to be appointed to a vacancy and then run as an incumbent than it is to run as a new candidate for an open seat for the first time. And I'm not by any stretch of the imagination saying we should all avoid having elections. That's not true at all. It's good for the public, but it is something to think about. Just that it's often easier for folks who maybe don't feel like they're ready to launch a whole campaign. But often, you know, people can run unopposed too, right? Like nobody ran against Jason or I this last cycle. And if there's somebody who knows a seat is gonna be vacant, knows that, you know, they're thinking about doing it. It's not the worst thing in the world for them to say like, yeah, I'm gonna run for this seat, I'm gonna do it, and then, you know, it might not be a contested election every time. It's tough because like elections are good for everybody. And it's good to have contested elections, but it also makes it more difficult, you know, for people who are wanting to run, especially as first time candidate.
I I have a thought from a conversation that I had with someone that I did ask to run, and this is again, something that I can't quite operationalize, but I wonder if how do you say, like cultural communities or groups are set up in our area? For example, this individual was like, no, I'm not gonna do it because there needs to be more cultural and representation and diversity. And so I'm gonna, and even I feel like in the conversation when I was appointed, there was one person was like, either she messaged me directly on Zoom, but it's like, I'm gonna bow out because I want you to do it. Like, I want there to be like, you know, cultural diversity, you know, on the board. And so I don't know if there are, you know, like if there's I think there's an NAACP, but like what communities, groups are set up in our area that we can, you know, say, you know, send a direct mailer to, you know, or go if they're, you know, meeting set up. Cause I'm thinking of the reason why I'm hesitant, cause I'm thinking in a way that like colleges are set up where they have like MSAs and, you know, the Black Student Union and things like that, where you can go and encourage people to, you know, come out and get involved and run for a seat. So, because I know that that is important to people, you know, across cultures. So this individual specifically, you know, they were not Black, but then I also think about, again, I mentioned the one person that texts me, but I get lots of text messages from people coming into the library. They're like, I saw you on the wall, you know. One of my colleagues from work the other day, she texted me, she's like, I saw you on the wall in the library. You know, my neighborhood, you know, I talk to people, and that is, again, it's inspirational to people. So I feel like in those two experiences that I had, where I asked someone to run, and then that individual that was being interviewed for the appointment when I came in was like, no, I'm not going to do it because I want to create space for someone that will bring some diversity to the community. So anyway, all that to say, like, I don't know what groups are out there, but I would want to, you know, reach out to communities of color or, you know, diverse communities to make sure that there's some representation.
And that was one of Rushmore's thoughts too, was to be sure that we can keep the Latin population on board.
Is there an age cutoff for people that can run for seats?
For this,
Yeah,
and they like an upper,
well, no, like, you know, you gotta be 18 or
oh,
older.
you have to be 18.
You have to be
18,
18.
and you have to be a registered voter.
Because I've always thought that for some poli-sci teacher at a high school or junior college to speak up about special districts for the day, you know, and how they blend into our political fabric. And by the way, there's seats available to run for up at the Aldadena Library or wherever.
Yeah.
You know, kind of spread the word. That would be a perfect internship that would be for some kid that wants to get into politics, but he's working on the staff of, you know, Holden, but he's also a trustee of the library too.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
The one community group that I always think of, because they have a very prominent community center, is the Armenian Cultural Center, right? Over on where that hill. Out down.
Alan.
Yeah, Ellen and New York.
I mean, I've worked with a number of organizations that kind of do this work of like how to get people to run for office, especially like this. And I think that, you know, this is where we probably need some relationship building from our end. So whether it's like National Youth Political Caucus, and the NAACP, the councils, like, there are lots of community groups. And a lot of them tend to be much more involved in Pasadena politics for obvious reasons. But I think we could do a lot more than we do. Again, this is like a bandwidth and capacity issue, right? But this is something where I think there's an opportunity for trustees to be more involved. And I think that's probably a good thing. I mean, I think about like, I don't know, Measure H and the rent control stuff that happened in Pasadena, like they were interfacing with a lot of these groups that do cross over into Pasadena, that do have a lot of overlap with our community.
I think it was also suggested you have so many faith-based organizations
There's a
here and
lot,
they
yes.
have their own leadership
Very
path,
important.
so, you know, is there a way to intersect with those?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, somebody has to do it, right? Like,
Right.
somebody's gotta,
So is it,
do that.
and you've suggested that you'd be willing to sit down and, you know, talk with a board member, so what would you need to support your activities to do that?
I think there'd have to be some kind of plan, there'd have to be some kind of plan, there'd have to be some kind of prioritization, we'd have to map out what it looks like, what the goal is, because you also don't wanna go to people and just be like, hey, we exist,
Right,
like, great.
it kind of follows on your marketing plan. in a
Yeah,
way,
I think that there
once you
needs
get
to
those
be,
messages.
yeah, there needs to be specific things where it's like.
And
yeah,
you know
we
where your
exist.
audiences are.
Right, but what do they need?
Yeah.
Right? What are they interested in? I think that's the conversation to have, right? It's not like, hey, we're doing all these things that you need to know about, where it's this sort of one directional broadcast communication. But it's like, hey, we're doing all these things, but we want you to be a part of that. And I want to understand more about where you all are at, what you're interested in, and what resources you feel like you might want more access to, or feel like you've got covered, or what folks in your community or your congregation need more of, or less of, or different of. How can we support you? Like, those are the kind of questions I think we would want to ask. But again, it has to be structured, it has to be well planned, and then there has to be follow-up, because this is the biggest piece, is like, you can have all the conversations in the world, but then if nothing else happens after that, it's like, well, that was a waste of everybody's time. And so this is a long game initiative, right? It's not a one-time thing.
Yeah,
This is a
very long game.
sustained, like, really long-term plan that everybody needs to be bought into, and it has to be unrolling in an organized way. All of which is doable, but this is why I'm saying we have to resource this.
And Jason, you had brought up earlier the issue of succession planning. Did you have more specifics in mind? Other than I'm going on.
I don't, I mean, I think. Yeah, I mean, it's how do we prioritize, right? Because there's. I mean, personally. I mean, there's capacity issues.
Right, just your time alone, much
Yeah, I
less
mean,
the board time and your committees.
I mean, most of us have, you know, full-time professional jobs outside of the board too, right? Like I do other, I think a lot of us do other volunteer work outside of the, like, so it's tough, and I think which stuff do we prioritize right now?
Yeah, totally. And I think that in the same way that we have sort of a set of strategic goals for the library and we have an operational plan, I do think it might be worth coming up for ourselves as a board, a set of like strategic goals, and then breaking that out. So it's like, okay, yeah, we can't do everything, and we can't all like quit our jobs and abandon our families to go like do community outreach, but we can do a little bit. And what is it that we can do in the next fiscal year that feels like achievable? And then what can we do to build on that in the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that? If we know that like, okay, we've got this set of like 6 basic, you know, kind of long-term goals, how do we start to make a dent in that a little bit at a time? And what are each of us sort of able to do, willing to do, comfortable doing in a way that feels sustainable and not like, you know, an undue burden.
One shot and not.
Yeah,
not
one
effective.
shot, and then it's
Yeah.
like, well, I did that one time, but I don't really have time to keep doing it.
Well, that's a little bit like the library policy was being formed before all of us.
Yeah.
I think you got here, where there'd be some plan on the books that was moldering away because nobody, I mean, I remember, in fact, I quoted it in one of the meetings or debates or whatever, that it was acceptable to send a telegram that you were not gonna be at the meeting. Remember that?
I do.
It was in, so it was in our thing, and it's, like it's the 21st century, and there's, it's crazy. But a lot of the stuff that we're doing, I think, right now is tying up a lot of loose ends in a way that transfers to the next generation of leadership here. And so in the broad sense, I think that we're already starting to groom this library to be a perpetual motion machine, because we set up all of these building blocks for the library. We dusted them off at least and take another look at them. And kudos to folks like Katie's been really involved with that, Jason as well. All of us have been involved in
Yeah.
those sorts of steps.
Everybody.
And so a lot of, we're talking about doing extra work and so on, but what we're doing right now, I believe the focus is entirely appropriate. And it will be a legacy that we all leave when we retire from these seats, because people will have an operational document to follow that's up to date and been thought through and so on. So I think that is the most important work that we're doing right now.
I really like the fact that you have these ad hoc members from the community coming into your very intense and detailed work. And it seems like that would be another list to really maintain, cultivate, when you find somebody that really
Yeah,
gets it,
Yeah,
and
just-
also brings in different perspectives. Or are there ways to, even in those committees that already exist, bring in more people to educate them?
I like what you said also in the town hall meeting, for lack of a better word, on Wednesdays, like, we have your email addresses, those of you who registered online, come.
Yeah.
And those of you who are here, make sure that you have, that you
Yeah.
got it, and I think that is a, low effort way to like,
Totally.
really make sure that we.
They're already engaged, to your earlier
Yeah,
point.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
really good point.
Yeah.
That's right.
So using the existing contacts that you have, how much did you save from the campaign? What sort of,
What do you mean?
like, you said you had 300 yard signs. Do you have the list of where they went, or?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so maybe even, digging it, sometimes that's old information and not very helpful, but any way to start to create sort of an active list of potential leaders.
There are real things with just sending that over, where the friends have to do that through them.
I will look into that. That seems like an excellent offline conversation to figure out.
Yeah, because that's the only thing is like, because that was done through the campaign,
The
had. to be-
campaign is
Okay,
separately
got it,
entity from
got
the
it.
library.
Yeah.
So
so there's-
there's,
So using your friends and foundation, really.
yeah, and they have that information.
Mhm.
I have a question, a logistics question. I remember in the budget conversations, because we did have to have an election, like there was money that stayed in the budget. Is that money only allowed to be used during like the election year, or can that money be used and purposed towards like some of these things? When they're not elections happening?
Right, that's a really good question. So, yeah, so it's $75,000 was budgeted for trustee elections, which obviously we didn't spend. What generally happens in that kind of situation is then we have a mid-year budget adjustment, right? Where it's like, okay, we move stuff around, like we need to spend $25,000 more in collections development or on whatever it is. So usually we move that around within the budget year rather than, like, we can't bank it. You know, well, I guess we could put it in the reserve, but like, that's not really, we run a zero budget,
But can you use it still toward electioneering? I don't know if that's not the right word, even when there's not like. Right now, are there things that we could be using some of those funds on in order to drum up interest, or even if it was like. You could creatively use some of that for direct mailing, because part of the goal of the direct mailing is to get people interested.
I get your point. It's not a restricted line item, so it doesn't matter. We can use it for anything. So,
Okay.
yeah, you could move some of that $75,000 over the communications budget or the mail budget, or, which is probably.
To even talk about how the taxpayer money is being used. I mean, it could be part of your messaging.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
was
yeah,
something
you
that
could
was
move that around.
suggested.
We won't budget that 75 in a year when there's, like, next year, we won't budget that because there's not an election.
Yeah, but could you budget? I mean, it sounds like or could you budget, if it's not an election year, still budgeted items for, or money for election, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
you
it's
you would have to
not-
be for communications or something, right? It
Okay.
couldn't be for elections, because we don't have, that's not a real cost, like. But I see what you're saying,
Yeah.
of like outreach and, you know,
Or just updating
yeah, like that's totally, I think, wrapped
might be
into
the way to do
the
it.
normal communication.
Like we
Yeah.
shifted another 7,000 into advertising and marketing. And the 75,000 is coming out, so it's kind of been like, but again, I think to Katie's point, like, how would you be spending it? It would probably be on direct mail communication and just like beef up that budget for that purpose.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. Just trying to make sure that there are, you need people resources, but, you know, just making sure that there's also financial resources that could be creatively used to do some of this.
Yeah, yeah.
work.
Unfortunately, I think we're too small to do public election funding.
Mhm. Any other thoughts with regards to the library leadership pipeline, building it? I think the general thing is just to build on what you've got and then try some of these new things, using your time and expertise, talk to people. I mean, it's person, you're right. It's really cultivation, isn't it?
I do think there's gonna be kind of a grassroots interest in running for the library seats as the new library starts to emerge in the
Right.
building of it.
Yeah.
People are
Right.
gonna wanna be part of that, so there's gonna be a natural incentive for them to be looking for open seats.
All right, I think we can move on then to number 5, priority goals for the service transition plan. There was a lot of good suggestions that came out of our conversations about the opportunities of both the closing and the opening to let people know what the library is. And then, as you were saying, you know, what's going on when buildings are closed, and then using the openings to really message in a bigger way to the whole community what their taxes paid for, and what the next sort of generation of library services looks like. So what thoughts do you have about that?
And I think expanding the services available through the My Libro app, and we've got 2 years to dramatically increase what's available there, but also the usage. Right, because the other thing too is like the more like part of expanding that could be communications, because you could push messages out through the app, right? That's one piece of it.
There's some folks who work on digital divide stuff for LA County specifically that I feel like might be really relevant, because I think that we underestimate the extent to which that impacts our community. Like, and I think it's easy to assume that everybody has a smartphone, or everybody has internet connection, or everybody has a computer or an email address, and I think that's really not true. And I think, you know, if there's any way to think about making meaningful progress on that front when the buildings are closed.
Mm.
And I don't have any more specifics than that, but.
But do you have any groups or
Yeah, there's
contacts?
some specific
Yeah,
commissions
that
and
just
groups through
would
LA
be
County that
great.
work, well, not through LA County, that think of this on an LA County wide basis,
Yeah.
as well as the state level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know there were a lot of comments about, you know, it's not just about the buildings, it's about how those buildings are activated. So I think this would be a great place in the conversation for any thoughts that you have about that. Sort of inserted. Or any direction you wanna see those built, see that, yeah. Or what's coming out of even the very thorough survey, the community survey about what you would want. Because it's always nice, you know, just as you were saying, Katie, many messages. If they made the effort to go to a town hall or made the effort to answer a survey, getting feedback back in their words, it's always a good. And affirming their ideas.
I mean, Nikki, you said this the other day, and I think it's true. I think we're on the right track with these building projects, like. I think about the feedback that we got at the town hall.
I heard it was great.
On Saturday and on Wednesday. I think people have a lot of, really understandable concerns about specifics, like both from a sort of aesthetics and design function standpoint, as well as a, kind of user experience standpoint, and that is further down the road. But I think in terms of general concepts, especially with a focus on flexibility, that seems to resonate with folks pretty well across the board. I mean,
And then there's a lot of talk about the program audit, matching the new building spaces with programs that really directly interface or provide the kinds of information or training or learning opportunities or socializing opportunities that are a match with the neighborhood interest and need. I think these remote vending machines are a great opportunity as well. The library's in your neighborhood and finding out where those spots are that people really gather, or
I think people are gonna be watching to see if their specific requests are, there's a lot of, during these meetings, which I went to the one, everybody was really concerned about the historic nature of this building.
Right.
So that's a very subjective thing. And I thought Mark did a pretty good job of explaining everything and making sure they understood what had to be done versus what could be done.
Right.
But yeah, and then we had, mentions about the noise in certain sections of the library. People are gonna want to see all that stuff get cleared up in this, and it's good to try to keep track of that as we go through.
so keeping track of the community feedback and
Yeah,
feeding back the information to them.
I was up for a second there. Did you talk a little bit about the space requirements and stuff? Because I'm totally.
No, we're just jumping into that right now. So if you have thoughts, it's a
Okay.
good time, Jared. I would just ask the question, what are the spaces that are new in the buildings that are most exciting to you as board members? What do you think has been like long overdue, or what do you think, just in terms of the building renovations, what do you think you're really accomplishing?
I really like that idea of the sort of units for rent, little offices that could be used, for folks. Because it becomes a revenue source for us, I believe. You'd be charging for those, right? Yeah,
Only if it's for-profit businesses even.
okay.
Yeah.
And not so much for the fact that it might be revenue building, but just the idea that we've got that resource, which is very attractive to people trying to have meetings and get together and so on.
As someone that, on two fronts, for a while, a few months, my son has a reading tutor, and we would come here and use, the one little room behind the children's. But, something happened and it wasn't regularly available for us, so then we had to try and hustle, see where can we find space for him to have his, that tutoring session. And then even for me, our office is moving, and they're basically saying work from home, which I abhor. So I'm okay, so where am I going to, I cannot stay home and work for the rest of my existence. So where am I gonna go on a regular basis? So I love the idea of the, having more space available for people to come and check out a room for a day or a few hours, or, things like that is really exciting to me.
I'm really excited that the Bob Lucas is gonna have an actual literacy center. And I think that's gonna provide a whole lot of opportunities for expanding the reach of the library. Because it'll be so much more obvious what's happening there instead of a couple of rundown cubicles. And
It's a real classroom.
it's a whole wing.
Yeah.
Oh, the
Like,
whole
it's
wing.
its own
It doesn't
thing, right?
exist now.
That's fantastic.
And then I think for here, like the whole first floor of the library and the entrance is all, it's like pretty much gonna become Altadina's civic center,
Yeah,
right? Like, if you think about a small town and the town hall, and like, that's the place that people go for all this stuff, right? I feel like that's what the first floor of the library is gonna become, right? It's gonna be the civic center for Altadena. Right, and it'll be available like almost separate from the operating hours of the library, like there, and like all the opportunities that that's gonna have as well. I think those are the two big things for me that stand out, that we're gonna accomplish through this.
I'm really amped about, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say just briefly, I think the iconic or the Bob Lucas Branch is gonna be an iconic building in Altadena too. And that's gonna have a huge impact, I think.
I'm really amped that at both locations, we're gonna have outdoor space with great Wi-Fi. Cause similarly, like I work from home, but like I cannot leave the house all day. I don't have a yard, and I love our parks, but like, you know, we're gonna have dedicated outdoor space at both locations. That's really accessible, really cool. Yeah, really good internet.
Yeah,
It's gonna be amazing.
A lot of time at our, or, you know, at the community garden working.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's really pleasant to, you know, be in a nice outdoor space also that you can have good access.
Yeah, yeah. It's nice.
It feels like Bob Lucas is just a beautiful example of community health, you know, and growth. It's
Yeah.
really cool.
It's gonna be so,
Yeah.
it's gonna be such a good library.
Especially because that corridor itself, there's so much
Yeah, yeah,
happening and changing, the library is gonna be part of that.
totally.
And is that an opportunity to, for other things that are happening on the corridor for there to be some synergy in the library?
Yeah, a lot of it's.
Aligning it.
Yes. probably.
Is it, are you talking about working with the private sector, with nonprofits? with-
No, I just think, I mean, a lot of what the change that's happening in that corridor, there's some tension around it, right? Because, you know, I think a lot of people will be able to fund what's happening in gentrification, right? But I think the Bob Lucas and the changes that are coming to that library can be part of the change, but in a nothing but positive way,
Right,
right? To kind of
it's bridging the
hopefully
gaps.
balance, you know, bridge the gaps, but also balance some of the other stuff that's happening, hopefully, right? So yeah, I would say almost more of a balance to the
Yeah,
private industry stuff that's
Okay.
happening, right? And not necessarily working together, but make a significant reminder
Keeping the community
through
diverse
that
and
change
broad,
about
and- yeah.
the history of the community, right?
well, it will be a accessible, free, attractive, enjoyable, public place to be.
Mhm.
And we don't have a lot of that,
Yeah,
especially not on Lincoln Avenue,
Mhm.
you know. We're,
Yep.
Julie, did you have anything to add to this in terms of your excitement about the new buildings and what you think
Well, I mean,
we'll respond to?
I think the main thing, right, is, you know, you need to have a good, like you said, a transition plan for when this closes. And I think understanding how we feel the needs of the community while it's closed is key. Whether it's just solely Bob Lucas or something at Franklin or the vending machines. Or, you know, standing up the second Curiosity Connection. I think we're doing a lot, but as we get closer, you know, I hope we really understand how to help folks out during that period.
Mhm. Not to disappear, to be really
Right.
visible and activated and so.
Yeah, so I think, you know, we have been sort of sketching things out, but I think as we get closer, there's gonna be a lot more that has to happen. And, you know, we're in the midst of that early days yet for doing that. I told my son about it, and I'm like, well, they're gonna close the library, and it's like, that's a bad idea.
Oh, no.
The worst idea
That's right.
ever. Yeah, So.
We
And
don't
what
wanna
does-
make little
what does
kids
he
cry.
want
That's
us
not
about?
the goal.
The library.
Oh, he just likes coming in and playing the toys and
Yeah.
getting videos
Yeah.
and all this stuff, but
Yeah.
it's like, his reaction was like, why do that? That's the worst idea. So I just think that, just as we, and again, it's a necessity, right? Something
Yeah.
has to happen. But if we start to really align the capacity we need during the transition, I think it'd be great as we, again, and we're making it right now, so.
I think it'll be interesting, I mean, you all may have probably already factored this in, but lessons learned from the early pandemic in terms of like how people use the library. Or wanted to use the library, even people that were grumpy, like there were people that were grumpy about it being. Remember, closed or only, having I don't remember exactly, but. It would be interesting to use that information too. I'm sure you've had that conversation, like, well, what did you want? To be able to plan for, when it will be closed.
It is a bit fortuitous because a lot of the stuff that people mentioned, the kits that go home, the curbside service, seems like you've already had a shift in the way people are willing to use the library and we found.
Yeah, 18 months to do this building. You mentioned that seemed like a long time.
Yeah.
And, so I'm sure we'll learn lessons along the way with that, Bob Lucas, about how to speed things up or how to anticipate in managing people's expectations. That'll be a big challenge.
And the good thing is you're gonna drive a lot more traffic to Bob Lucas.
Yeah,
That's
that's
true.
right.
If people don't know about Lucas now, they definitely will.
Does it have a drive-through? Yeah.
No, we're taking away that part of the.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what I meant about my opening comment when I got back about the space. I was talking about what are we gonna do about, the collection that we have here. I mean, I feel like I'm way behind on that particular item.
Well, we're working on it, right? That's the question we're trying to figure out the answer to now is where's the offsite storage, maybe programming availability. I mean, we've made some progress, I think, with looking at Franklin. But there are a ton of unanswered questions. We've looked at that space next to Webster's, we've looked at several other locations, but many of those have a crazy high price tag associated with them, just in terms of rent and or in terms of accessibility and use upgrade, where we have to drop, $1 million to make it
Yeah,
functional
yeah,
for 18 months.
Yeah, right.
Which is insane, so I'm hoping, I mean, I don't mean to jinx it, but I'm hoping that we can make this situation at Franklin work.
Out of curiosity. What are the barriers for the Franklin? It just seems so natural. You know what I mean? 'Cause it's a
Sometimes
city.
working with Pasadena Unified is a slower process than one would hope.
It's interesting.
So I think it just takes time,
Right,
you know?
2 years.
Um,
Come on.
Well, there's also, I mean, part of the space is already being used, right? And, so who knows what the plans are for that in the future.
Right.
There's we've got to think about, even though it's temporary, accessibility and egress and ingress, there's just.
signage and what's the process and where does it make sense to have public facing space versus just storage?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces.
I think that was gonna be, among other build out costs, like the biggest challenge with the Webster space. It's like
Accessibility,
huge money.
drama.
If it was even possible, it would be
Yeah.
huge money to make that space acceptable.
Which one exactly is it?
Next to Webster's, the empty.
That big empty spot on North Lake,
Okay,
next to the pharmacy.
okay.
It's gonna be that like indoor food court kind of situation restaurant that
Oh, yeah.
that like never happened.
Yeah. I
That
actually
corner one.
testified in favor of those guys at the planning meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, that one. Cause
They
it's like,
they walked
4,000
away from that deal, like, yeah, so
Yeah.
that's too bad.
well, they couldn't get the county to, they couldn't sustain it long enough for the county to like move on anything, so.
there was a lot of pushback from the neighbors about that too.
Correct.
Yeah.
That was.
So it seems like everybody is in agreement on the goals, but it's the, yeah, sticky details.
Is that the Esophageal
Stage.
Library still there? Used to be up a little farther on Lake.
Yeah, I mean, it's still there, yeah.
I just wonder if that's probably not big enough and they've got their own.
Well,
books
they're
in
full of books.
there. Yeah, full of books.
So it's not vacant, right?
Yeah,
I don't think they'd want to move out all their stuff.
that's true. I didn't know it was, with the status of the, who was there, so.
Yeah. It's a privately owned.
So we all have to be on the lookout for an empty. building.
Yeah,
If
so
you see
everybody.
this building, you need somebody who wants to rent it to us for free.
Baja Ranch, right? Like,
Yeah, no, we talked about it actually, but
but I feel like that's humongous.
it's,
But-
and again, like, these are expensive places.
We also have the giant
Accessibility.
hole in the ceiling, which is part of the reason why.
Correct, yeah.
So.
Oh.
Well, these are the type like, not specifically that one, but if we can get a sweetheart deal because they're still being paid by the previous tenant who had a longer lease but just, broke it but paid the penalty, there's possibilities for like sweetheart deals. Right?
Sure, so I just wanna say that like Nikki and Doug Cauliflower specifically have done a ton of work on this
Mhm.
for a long time, right? Like, so everything you're saying, yes, I totally agree. And also the inventory of available commercial spaces
Right.
that are within our budget it's bad. It's bad in Altadena.
Basically, zero.
And people want a lot of money for commercial
Yep.
leases. And so, we've been,
When the New York Times names you one of the top 10 hottest neighborhoods in the country, it kind of
Oh, yeah.
kills a lot of
Your
opportunity.
anonymity is gone.
it's tough. I mean, we've also looked at the possibility of just portable buildings.
Yeah.
Sitting someplace. Yes, we've looked at that. And again, like, we'd have to run power, we'd have to run water, we'd have to have portable bathrooms, we'd have to have accessible parking. Like, all of these things are in the standing agenda item that we talk about every single Monday.
Yeah, I feel like this one is,
It's-
it's a
yeah.
mega work in progress.
It
right?
is,
So
but to Terry's point, if you come across something, if you see something, if you talk to somebody and they're like, even if it's sort of unorthodox, right? Like, let us know.
Because even this parking lot's gonna be limited, because a huge chunk of this is
Yeah.
gonna be
Construction.
construction and equipment and
Yeah.
their own
Trailer and
offices for the
everything.
project.
Yeah,
All right, we're to the final item, and that is preparation for the next strategic plan. I think one thing that was fun about doing the review of the strategic plan was it raised more questions about the things you needed to know in order to get ready for your next strategic plan, which I think you've got 2 or 3 years out from that, right, Nikki? But probably in the next year or so, you'll be thinking about how that next strategic plan is done and what you want out of it, and maybe what pieces were missing, especially given your experience during the pandemic. What new sorts of service strategies and directions you might want to go. And then to your point, 3 years from now is so long in technology. All kinds of things could have exploded and expanded by then, so. Are there things that are at the top of your list that Nikki should be considering as she thinks about launching that project? Probably next year or the year after that, so that you're ready to adopt it the year you need it. Things you think really work about this strategic plan, both the process and the content of it.
I mean, the biggest thing is obviously gonna be thinking past the reopening of the buildings. Right, and how do we, I think Terry kind of mentioned it, how do we take advantage of the natural kind of growth and enthusiasm that's gonna come from that, right? And at least have a strategy for how we're gonna make some of that permanent.
Yeah, I think it's like a lot of public buildings, when they're open, you generate a lot of activity, a lot of press, a lot of free media,
Mhm.
a lot of excitement. And then, so year 1 and 2, you'll have a lot of business. And then typically, if you don't sustain that, then it dribbles off a bit. So that's a good point, keeping the momentum going.
And one huge event that Nikki mentioned the other day was the fact that, 2026, it'll be 100 years exactly since the district was formed. And that, to me, is a subject that has a little bit of momentum to it. And I think people will cover that pretty well if we get out to the right press agents and stuff like that. And that's great. Everybody was all crazy enthusiastic about Christmas Tree Lane and their 100th, and people love their history around
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's gonna have to be like a year-long series of events and not
Yeah.
just a one-off celebration, right?
Yeah, there's a lot to do when you think about it, a lot of things that you can celebrate about Altadena. In a sense, it's the 100-year anniversary of Altadena. In a sense.
Well, yeah, because we are kind of the constituent
Yeah,
organizing entity that is. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a marvelous opportunity, really. And I think you're doing such a great job bringing in these kinds of programming that show the hidden histories of the community and the alternative histories of the community.
2026 also LA will be hosting the World Cup.
Ooh,
It'll be very much gearing up for the Olympics. Like, there's gonna be so much going on.
I didn't know that, 2026, that's happening.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot going on.
But the Olympics are in 2028.
Yeah. And you can imagine though that like by 26, the hype is gonna be
It's gonna be bonkers.
full blown.
Yeah.
A lot of controversy about that too, like how that's gonna.
At least we're not
Yeah.
building out 20 stadiums that'll never ever be used again.
Oh my God.
At least we're using the stuff we already have.
You're talking about the last World Cup, all the stadiums.
Any of the Olympics, any of the World Cup.
Yeah.
yeah, and
That's true.
Like, I'm not gonna, I can't watch another documentary about the dilapidated Olympic facility.
Yeah, but LA did pretty good. They were.
I mean, it's still open for a lot of programs.
you need this done.
I think in general, as far as like, I don't know, I feel like where we're at with just how we're handling the strategic plan now is great. I think the latest version of it where we've kind of condensed and streamlined how that moves into like the annual plan that we just reviewed. I don't know, I feel like we're in a good place and we've got a process that.
So really tuning up the existing versus, trying to recreate, recast, unless something comes out of the marketing work.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know what to say, like, the last time we did the strategic plan process, there had not been one, right?
Right.
Like, so we were starting from nothing. And I think if we had to do it over again, the only thing I would have changed is I would have taken a longer time to do it. I think I really underestimated how much time you need. And that process was, deliberately designed to kind of maximize community input. Like the strategic planning committee was all community members, basically. And I think that was great. It was really fun. And I think, that structure and approach probably would work real well again. I would just encourage us to give it enough time to actually unfold, especially because it'll be happening at a time when you have building closures, which will be.
So can you remind me, the
Yeah.
strategic plan was
2019.
2019?
Yeah.
And
So it started the process in 2018, and then I think we formally adopted it in 2019.
And then it goes through 2024.
24.
years?
Yeah. 5 years.
It was approved in December of 19, so we kind of kicked it off.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So it's sort of valid, you say through 2025, and then we're looking to do it.
Maybe at the beginning of.
Probably makes sense to do one in coordination with the new buildings.
I would think so,
You
yeah.
know, the types of programming and services and
Yeah, they
who
can
knows
get
what
off.
that's gonna look
Yeah.
like.
It's gonna be tricky, right? Because the current one will expire like relatively soon after we close this for renovation, basically.
Well, we can also just vote to extend.
I don't.
Yeah, you
think we
can.
Really put a date on it,
Yeah.
you know,
Doesn't matter.
and that's why we did the review, and the review was like, it still works.
Yeah.
It still makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think we have time until the renovations are kind of coming to a close to be kicking it off and doing it then.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It may even make sense to wait until both buildings are open and have been operating for a little bit of time.
Right.
Because we don't know how those use patterns are gonna change or, you know, populations are gonna change as we go through that, so,
And you could gather the user experience piece, you know,
yeah.
people's experiences with the new building and.
I don't, yeah, and I also think about the fact that we will have switched to a new revenue model by 2026, right? Because Measure A will have expired and will be switched to the new Measure Z service component, the debt service. So like in a lot of ways, I think it makes sense to wait a little bit until some of those things have happened and then
Yeah.
it'll be like 26.
So probably the need to just extend the current is what I'm hearing, you know.
I think that makes sense, but I don't know,
I
like,
mean, we're still gonna do the annual.
yeah, we're gonna like look at it
Review,
every
so we could-
year.
Yeah.
I have a question, yeah, and I heard you say something earlier, Jason, and I'm wanting to follow up on that. In terms of, the strategic plan and having some sort of alignment with like town council or like an element where they are, like there's like a shared piece of the, did you say something like that earlier?
Like such an agreement.
Yeah.
I was mostly just talking about, like, I feel like over the last 4 years, both current board members and those that came before us have been very intentional about wanting to take our role and expand it and be much more proactive in the community and the direction of the library. And I was really just making an analogy that I see, you know, over that same time period, a growing number of people being involved in the town council, wanting to take the same approach to the town council, right? And so I wasn't suggesting anything specific, but I think we've got the two main organizations of kind of governance, if you will, of Altadena, in some ways on the same track, and that we should just pay attention to opportunities that may.
Yes, and so I'm wondering if there is some formal way, not necessarily like we have to have a similar or same or a line item on your strategic plan and you have one on ours, but when we get to that point where it has to be revisited, that there's some like intentional thought about that.
Oh, for sure.
And we did that last time, right?
With
So when we
town
did
council,
the
yeah.
existing strategic plan, we had a portion where we kind of like had put together some initial thoughts, and then we held kind of a, it wasn't formal, it wasn't a forum, but it was like basically we invited all the town council members to come and talk with us and be like, hey, what do you guys think? To get their feedback. And that was like, I'm glad we did that. I think it was really helpful.
Okay.
Sometimes I think you get a lot better information when you're presenting and asking for feedback off a specific document than just give us general information about what you want to see in the
Right.
library, right?
Right.
And did you do alignment with the school district and chamber and Rotary and others?
We had
Is that
people who were
PCC.
we were at the beginning of that relationship building process, I think it's fair to say, in 2018, 2019, because none of that existed.
Mhm.
And we were a very different district than we are now. So people who were involved in the strategic planning committee certainly had those relationships and brought those perspectives, but there was not a formal
I would argue
integration.
some of the relationships that may have existed had been damaged.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's probably
being
been
repaired.
polite.
Being really
Yeah.
nice, okay.
Like the community was definitely fractured, like there was clear dividing lines on the issues and people were being either had pick sides or felt like they were being pressured to pick side, like there was a lot of repairing.
Mhm.
I think we've gotten past that specific
Yeah,
thing.
that's really great.
And now we're at the point of like, okay, we've got a good baseline, now we need to broaden.
And we know how we connect and we know how we.
Yeah, we were a
Relate.
little more insular back than the library did.
Okay.
This was me as an outsider looking in.
Yeah.
Now I think it's, spread out a little.
Much more embedded in the community.
Yeah, it's more
and,
embedded in the
and visible.
community.
So basically just building on that.
Well, and I don't
Well,
want to
I think-
underestimate, sorry, just to cut this piece. I don't want to underestimate the piece that has happened on the staff side towards professionalization. Like, we are a much more, and this is not a criticism of anybody who was around then, but we are a much more professionalized public agency
Mhm.
than we were
Yeah.
in 2016 then,
Mhm.
you know, and that's a huge deal.
Mhm.
And
So it represents a lot of work.
it's a lot of work, but.
And that's part of establishing a legacy that's one more small piece and trying to have things in place to ensure that it doesn't go there.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, that's right.
Well, it's been a good day.
Yeah.
I think we've plumbed the depths of things that we can think more about and certainly don't mean to make this day a new list for Nikki, but I will try to summarize some of the bigger thoughts and then just as a sort of a closing exercise, if everybody would just maybe throw out a headline that you'd like to see about the library 3 years from now, 5 years, let's say 5 years, since you've got a little ways till you're reopening, but when those buildings reopen and the community is really seeing the great work that you made these last few years and in the future, next 2 years in particular, what do you hope the big message will be about the library?
Altadena City is incorporated thanks to.
Oh my God, that's funny.
Yeah, people would love us forever if we were responsible for a Trader Joe's. No, I think the We Are Neighbors piece of the strategic plan is at the center of it for me, right? Because at the end of the day, I think a lot of what we're talking about comes down to that, right? Because, good neighbors, there's a communication network, right? There's WhatsApp, there's email, there's whatever.
There's trust.
Good neighbors, there's trust. Good neighbors, there's people sharing resources and skill sets and so I think if we in 5 years from now are in a place where far more of Altadena views the library as a good neighbor, we've done our job.
Yeah, I don't know, given history, I don't think we want any press, good press.
You recommend flying under the radar
Yeah.
of media?
Well, I mean, because a lot of the things that we're trying to achieve, in a sense, aren't like press worthy, you know what I mean? I feel it's like making people feel comfortable and safe and have, access to resources and do X, Y, or Z and learn. Not
I kind
newsworthy.
of disagree with you.
Yeah.
Because what I'm thinking, I'm trying to make into a headline, but something along the lines is like the Altadena Library shows them how it's
That's
been
right.
done.
That's right.
Like, how
Right.
what community looks like.
Yeah, I agree with that. I have long thought that because we are a special district, because we kind of do a lot of wild and crazy things, and because we are really innovative, like when the pandemic happened, we were at the forefront of libraries making decisions to do things, and we have consistently been pushing the envelope. I would love to see us, as one of the top libraries in the nation for doing interesting, cool, community-driven things. Like, there's no reason to do that.
Yeah, that is a chance to build on the legacy of the library. I mean, and plus we've got some tailwinds on this too, because, you mentioned that article about in the New York Times about Altadena and the great place it is to live and so on. And that vibe is happening all over Southern California, you know, people that have moved into our neighborhood. When we talk, they said, oh, you could get so much more, and it's so much more peaceful here, and still close to where I live downtown. It's got all that infrastructure stuff built right into it, so. It would be nice to
You're
Just
part of that strong
leveraging
infrastructure.
that, yeah, and with better services and so on.
Any other? If not headlines, thoughts about goals? Sounds good. Sounds great. I really appreciate all your positivity all day long. It's been great. And I think it helps clarify for the staff the places where they really can pay attention and make a difference. I think we've got a lot of challenges ahead that, I mean, amazing, 2 big projects and the redistricting on top of that. And just congratulate you on all the work you're doing and all the special committees you do attend. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you
Thanks,
for
Danielle.
guiding us through it.
Yeah, my
It's
pleasure.
it's nice
It's
that
been-
we don't get to do this very often.
I know.
Yeah, no, it's really great to
Conversations,
hear
yeah.
each other and such respect around the table. That's great.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Looking forward to
Thank
seeing
you.
more.
All right,
Yep.
sounds good.
More excuse? No.
No,
excused.
no, I still haven't learned
Yeah.
That's true.
My bad.
Getting real loosey goosey around here.
So we can virtually. So do we have any correspondence? Awesome. Do you have any proposed future agenda items?
I kind of have one, but I'm not quite sure how to approach it. I think maybe I should just put it in my government liaison report next time, and then maybe ask for an action item in the following month. Because I don't think it has to do with AB 41, which is a bill that Chris Holt is promoting, because he's the author. And it has to do about internet service.
Oh, cool.
So I gotta find out a little bit more about it. They had a town hall
Yeah, I
meeting a
know.
couple of weeks ago, and I attended that. But, and so I think it's a little too early to call for a resolution of support on something I'm not quite sure of yet. So maybe I'll just withhold this until the next meeting.
Have you talked to Anne Marie, his field rep, about it?
No, but I got the entire program sent to me with all the
Okay.
contact names. So Anne Marie is the one to look
Anne Marie,
at.
come on, if you need to get in touch with her, let me know.
Okay, I will. Great.
She's
I
great.
need to do it in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, just let me know.
And then the Form 700, is that gonna be emailed as usual? or-
Do April first, yeah, April first, we just gotten a date for that, so I'll be reaching out to everybody, probably on the deadline time as early as possible, so this one. I'll be sending out an email to everybody. The other one. You have the option of doing the paper copy if you do, I can just make a scan of it, but it's probably best if you're able to do it digitally through the portal.
Mhm.
And if you can't access the portal for whatever reason, just contact me and I'll help you do it.
And so, Boone, just so you know, it's like an annual conflict of interest reporting.
I'm going through it right now and I'm like, this is so complicated.
So unless you're like part owner and like one of our vendors, I mean, it's
Yeah.
a 1-page, pretty simple thing for us, because our scope is so narrow, but. Yeah. Okay. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, we are adjourned at 12:56 PM.